I'm Kevin Clark, an electric safety rep on board the Bruce platform. And I was asked to come along today to answer a question, which was why I became an electric safety rep. Why did I put myself forward to become a safety rep? And it came about from an incident that happened with my family some 10 years ago, where, I said, before coming onto the Bruce, I was travelling the world, living life to the full. It's all good. And as an event transpired, it changed my life. And what I don't want to see is it happening to other people in the future. It was an avoidable event, which we'll go on to. So yeah, we'll get started. I just want to introduce you to my family. This is my wife, Donna, and my daughter, Casey Jo. Just a normal, loving family. My wife was really active, was keen to get out with my daughter, roller skating, ice skating. They'd be doing everything together. This is not long before my daughter's 4th birthday. That's through an ice rink in the Forfar. I said they'd be doing everything together. My wife, she loved doing trampolining, where they'd use the big Olympic-sized trampolines, and the heights that she would be going to were crazy. And she would encourage my daughter to do the same. Much to my disgust, I was petrified when I seen them doing it. But in this photo, I just wanted to highlight the fact that you're seeing my daughter with a wee helmet on, and nobody else there wears one. And to be fair, I was there roller skating myself, or ice skating, wouldn't be wearing one either. So my daughter was turning 4 on May the 4th, my little stormtrooper, and we decided we'll take her to Disneyland Paris. You know, she was into princesses and all the rest of it. And if you've got a young daughter, and young kids in general, I thoroughly recommend it. It was a great time. I had an absolutely amazing holiday. But I didn't realise that this was going to be our last holiday, or normal holiday, if you like, where we could go and access everything as we normally would. We were there a week and a half. I left and come home well relaxed. Great time. My daughter was just delighted with everything. And I was heading off to Malta to do some commissioning work. For my daughter's birthday, somebody kindly got her a set of roller skates and everything, so straight away I'm like, right, roller skates, what do I need? So I've got a new hard hat, well, a new crash helmet, if you like, knee pads, elbow pads, wrist pads, so she could fall down the stairs, she would have just bounced. She was bulletproof. I didn't really consider my wife. You know, my focus had been on my daughter, making sure she was safe. And I say I went away to work, tickety-boo, everything was good. Whilst I was at work, I broke my phone. So I was working onshore. I broke my phone a few days before heading home. Not a big deal, it just meant I lost a bit of contact with my family. So I got home, and what I was used to was my daughter coming running to the door, you know. It doesn't happen now, certainly, but when she was younger, running to the door, all excited to see her dad coming home, and what have you got me? You know, where have you been? What have you got me? But there was nobody there. And I didn't think too much of it at the time. It was a nice day. They're probably out at the park playing or something like that. So I was like, right, dump my bags, get a spare phone. Everyone's got a spare phone in their house, so change my SIM card over. And that's when it all went wrong. So I started getting a barrage of messages on my phone and missed calls. And the last one was from my father, telling me that it's okay, we've got your daughter, Casey Jo, but your wife, she's in the hospital. She's suspected of having liver failure, kidney failure, and she's been rushed in. I didn't know why, didn't know what happened. I was like, what's going on? So left everything, jumped in my car, and beelined it to Nine Wells Hospital, where I was confronted with, I don't know how to describe it, it wasn't my wife flying in front of me. She was nearly double the size she would normally be. For one, she'd swelled up like a balloon. And she was screaming and writhing in agony. She was begging me for help. What's happening? And her eyes were the deepest red I've ever seen. There was no white. It was like something out of a scary movie. They were just red. I was petrified. And I'm looking at the doctors. They didn't really know what was going on, didn't know what had happened to her. And they'd end up giving her a load of morphine. So that let her sleep. And I left her thinking, well, at least she's in hospital. You know, she's in the safest place. I'll get home, I'll get my daughter, I'll find out what's actually happened. I say it was a bit of a shock to the system. So I'd headed home, picked up my daughter, and that's when I found out that she's had a fall when she was roller skating, but she didn't think anything of it. She didn't think she'd hit her head or anything like that. She just had a fall, got back up and got on with her day. Now, they were roller skating at the ice skating rink you've seen there. They dry it out in the summer, so that's where she was roller skating. And she was there with my daughter, my niece, and her sister. So after the fall, they'd went away, they'd had ice creams, something that my wife doesn't remember doing. She was the one driving. She doesn't remember doing that either. But that night, she started to get a sore neck and her eyes were all bloodshot. So her father took her to the hospital to check her out. At the time, I don't think she's told them that she's hit her head because she didn't think she had. But they gave her some eye drops for conjunctivitis and some paracetamol for her sore head and sent her on her way. Later on that night, my other sister-in-law, who fortunately is a nurse, she'd went to see how she was getting on, which time she noticed my wife was slurring her words and had puffed up, so she's straight onto an ambulance, get her through to 9 Mills Hospital, see what's going on, and say, I then turn up the next day to find her in the hospital. Moving on to the following day, I managed to drop my daughter back off with my parents. I thought, right, I'll get back to 9 Mills, see how she is today, see if things have improved. And during the night, my wife has suffered what they call a sports stroke. So it's her right-hand side of her body. She'd lost all movement of her hands, her legs. That right hemisphere had gone. If you stood on that side of her, you didn't exist. She couldn't hold a conversation with more than one person. And that's when fear kicked in for me. Says, that's number one, what's happening to my wife? Is it going to get worse? And then the realisation is that, wait a minute, I'm self-employed. I'm meant to be going away next week, I can't do that. It says, we've just bought this big new house. It says, I've got bills to pay. Panic stations really set in. How long is this going to take? How long is it going to take for her to recover? And again, in hindsight, says, I'm probably like much of you out here, says, when we sorted out our life insurances and things like that, because I was the one that was making the money, I'm insured to the hilt. I could disappear and they're well looked after. Didn't really consider what would happen if my wife had hurt herself and the fact that I would have to stop work to look after her and my daughter. So fortunately, I had a flat that was meant to be my pension. I was able to sell that to pay the bills while I took a lot of time off work. And the companies that I'd worked for, they were really supportive and helped me out. And essentially what they did was I was able to organise having one of my wife's friends stay over every now and again to look after her and my daughter. And that would allow me then to go away and earn some money, again, just to pay the bills. Says I could never pay back the friends and family for their support and what they'd done for us. But what I would say is my daughter, who just turned 4, lost that active, loving parent, the one that was doing everything for her. And she had to grow up really quick. So by the time she went to school for primary 1, she was the oldest primary 1-year-old I know. She was really self-sufficient. She still does look after her mum. I'm super proud of her for that. But it's all came about from a simple bump to the head. Move on. This is us. Not long after it was about a year after it, we were able to get away on a wee break. See my wife in the wheelchair. She still needs a wheelchair to get about for the most part. While she was in hospital and moved to the neurological ward, she was getting a lot of physio to try and regain the use of her right side. So good thing is her face came back up, which was good. She's got her movement in her arm, and she's got some movement in her leg, but our physio had to stop because she developed a condition called complex regional pain syndrome, CPRS. And essentially her leg's hypersensitive. If you brush past it with a feather, it's like somebody dragging the coarsest sandpaper down her leg. So she's on a crazy amount of medication now just to keep that at bay. And it's, I say, the condition's complex. They don't really know a lot about it, other than giving her the medication. There's not a cure. She might wake up tomorrow and it's gone. It's all about the wrong part of the brain working the leg. And from what I've been told, it came about through a concussion. So that fall, she has hit her head, or the shock at least, injured a part of her brain. It hadn't been seen or recognised when she'd been at the hospital initially. And the swelling that had occurred while she was still conscious has led to her suffering that stroke. And because of the condition she's developed since then, she's not been able to do the physio that she would need to regain her full mobility. Fortunately, she can get about on her sticks. She can drive a car and so on. And she can hold the conversation with more than one person now, which is maybe not a bonus, to be fair. She listens to me a lot. But yeah, so life's is as normal as we can get it. But going on holiday now is a military exercise. We've got to plan away in advance where we're going to go. Is there facilities for somebody in a wheelchair? How much medication do we need to take with her? We need to get the paperwork to go with it because of some of the stuff she's got. Interesting. And yeah, I say, we try and, say for my daughter, make life as easy as possible. I'll probably overly compensate with my daughter now more than anything. Off the back of the accident, the things she used to do with her mum, I try and do now as much as I can with her. And maybe one of my questions for you guys is, when you're out on your bikes or roller skating, mountaineering, climbing, do you wear a helmet? It's something you would do. Would you wear one now after hearing a story about the consequences of not wearing one and how a simple knock to the head can devastate not just my wife's life, but the family's lives? I say we make the most of it. I'm not sitting up here all upset. You get on with things. Life's throw you curveballs. You need to keep on moving. But when there's something that's avoidable, we should be trying to prevent it from happening. And yeah, when you're seeing young kids out on bikes and things like that, would you encourage them to wear a helmet? When I was young, there was a stigma. You wouldn't wear a helmet. It says, helmets are for wussies. We'll be going about jumping about the bikes. Don't go anywhere without my helmet now if I'm on my bike. So yes, why is this relevant to the offshore industry? And why did it change me? It says, well, for one, I failed in a risk assessment as far as I'm concerned when I focused on protecting my daughter and not took into consideration that, obviously my wife was going to be there doing it with her. Would she have worn a helmet if I got her one? I don't know. I think she probably would, to set an example, but it's a feeling I'd made, or that's how I feel. I feel I made one. And because of that, it changed how I work. So I'm now fortunate enough to have been a core crew member on the Bruce. And being on there, I don't want to see anyone else going through a similar situation. And the things that we do offshore subject us to similar hazards where you could potentially trip and fall, hit your head, the type of headgear you're wearing and all the rest of it. And for me, it's all about removing those unnecessary risks. And again, I think with something like this, if you can see the consequences of a simple knock to the head, you're more inclined to pay attention and protect yourself and protect those round about you. So slips, slips and falls is still one of the leading causes of accidents and reportable incidents in the North Sea. I didn't have the 2023 figures, but 2022, the last one, we had 72 injuries reported to RIDDOR, of which 23 of them were contributed to slips, trips and falls. It's 32%. And as I say, a simple fall from ground level is all it takes to devastate a life. And a lot of these can be avoidable. Stats running back to 2012 again show a similar stat. The slips, trips and falls are a consistently strong leading factor when it comes to injuries that are being reported. And in 2022, so they've changed the graphic slightly in their reports. Again, it highlights there the 32%. So it's the biggest triangle in the pie chart at the end that's contributed to somebody hurting themselves. This is, I think we can do better as an industry. It says you're never going to eliminate everything. We're human beings. I just stumbled coming up the stairs there earlier on. Fortunately, it wasn't as I come up on the stage. But it is about eliminating the hazards that we can, or the hazards that we're identifying. So for me, how can we make a difference as safety reps? Well, number one, we can make sure while we're working that we're keeping our work site safe, keeping it tidy, free from trip hazards, erecting barriers, but good barriers to prevent people getting into your work site and coming into contact with the hazards that are around us, and highlighting the potential hazards during the toolbox talk so that everyone that you're working with is aware of them, and give them the opportunity to interact and contribute to the toolbox talk as well. So rather than having people, you're standing there with your permit and your hazards highlighted, these are the hazards, these are the controls we've got in place, that's pretty much it, sign here. Have that two-way conversation Get them involved. Make sure that everyone's happy that you've captured the hazards and you've got the appropriate controls in place. As safety reps, we should be encouraging the people that we represent to look out for each other and challenge things when it's not right. So again, if they're not happy with the controls that are in your permit, give them the voice. Yeah, they've got a voice. Encourage them to stop the job. That's probably one of the key takeaways for me, is have that voice, have that courage. It doesn't take a safety rep to stop a job, but we can enforce that. We can encourage the guys to do it and make sure that they don't feel victimised should they do stop a job. I think there's been precedents in the past where somebody stopped a job because of X and it's frowned upon, and seen in a negative light. That shouldn't be the case, and we should be encouraging the guys to do that, and also encouraging our management teams to support them as well. Again, fortunately on the Bruce, we do have a really strong safety culture, and we do try and nurture it, and we do try and encourage people to stop jobs when they're not safe, or when they feel it's not safe. And I truly believe that if we do promote that culture, we're going to reduce the incidences, not necessarily just slip, trips and falls, but the wider hazards and accidents that do occur offshore, whether it be to individuals or process related. For me, the data that I sourced for this presentation is all available on the HSE website. I'm more than happy to give you links to the sites and where you can pick up the reports. They go into a great deal of detail, indicating what the injuries were, what part of the body was injured, things like that. And you can look further into it as well to try and understand why these incidents happened in the first place. But it's not all doom and gloom, Life's for living, and I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, you must wear a helmet, you must do this, you must do that. It says, life is about taking risks. It's just controlled risks. Understanding the hazards. Don't make the silly decision of taking a shortcut to do a job quicker. But at the same time, say, in the two pictures there, that's myself, if it looks like me, and my daughter. Which one of the two has an understanding about risks and hazards? And I said, my daughter. She didn't say a peep as she went down. She was living life. I was screaming my heart out going down. And said, there is a video there if you want to see it later on. It's not one I could present because there's a little bit of foul language in it. But yeah, I said, I think what I'm trying to get across with this is sometimes we can become preachy as safety reps, and you must do this, you must comply with that. And you lose the attention of your constituents, where they're representing them. Give them a bit of context, Show them why it's important to be risk assessing properly, why we should be following the procedures and the rules, and why we should be looking out for each other. And then hopefully, the numbers that we see in these stats come down.